Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating. We are looking at the incredible and honestly surprising ways that a massive pop culture phenomenon like the Pokémon franchise is actively shaping real-world science. You know, it's really not just a game anymore, it's actually influencing how we discover, how we name, and even how we interact with the natural world all around us. So we're going to bridge that gap today between pixelated monsters and serious natural history.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. What do rare Australian beetles and a smartphone game actually have in common? I know it sounds like the setup for a bad joke, right? But the answer actually goes straight to the heart of a shared human desire, that deep urge we all have to explore, to discover, and to, well, catch them all. Because whether you're swiping a Pokeball on a digital screen or trekking through the Australian outback with a research net, the thrill of discovery is exactly the same. And today, we're going to see how these two seemingly entirely different worlds have spectacularly collided. Section 1. Gotta name 'em all. The legendary beetles. And honestly, nothing illustrates this crossover quite like the discovery of these three brand new Australian beetles. We've got Binburum articuno, Binburum moltris, and Binburum zapdos, named quite literally directly after the famous legendary bird Pokémon. This whole discovery was published back in December 2020 in the Canadian Entomologist by Dr. Darren Pollock and his colleague Yun Xiao, who was a PhD student at the Australian National University at the time. So what happened was Yun was sorting through beetle specimens in the Australian National Insect Collection, and he stumbled across a few incredibly distinct specimens of the genus Binburum. But there was a catch. They only had a tiny handful of these specimens available to study. Because they were just so unique and so incredibly rare, they decided they had to get them named and officially described for the scientific record.
Now, you might be wondering, how do you even go about picking a name for a brand new species? Well, a fundamental rule of taxonomy is that the name has to be entirely unique, completely different from any other described species out there. And as Dr. Pollock noted, his colleague Yun was a huge aspiring Pokémon trainer back in the day. So because these specimens were just so exceptionally rare, Yuna actually suggested naming them after the legendary birds. Dr. Pollock naturally thought this was a brilliant idea. And by leaning into pop culture, they did something incredibly smart. They generated this massive, above-average media coverage for the discovery of a tiny beetle. I mean, let's be real, that's an area of science that usually gets totally overlooked by the mainstream press. It was just a genius way to get the whole world to pay attention to natural history.
But the absolutely crucial point here is that this wasn't just some clever PR gimmick. This is real, rigorous science. Take Binburum articuno, for example. It's endemic to Australia, its larvae hang out under the moist bark of dead celery-top pine logs, and, thankfully for all of us, the adults are less than a foot long, because honestly, a foot-long beetle would be absolutely terrifying. It's got these two half-ellipse forewings covered in hundreds of black spots. And perhaps most fittingly for a creature named after the ice-type Pokemon Articuno, it has these two striking, bright blue compound eyes right on the sides of its face. It's just a fantastic example of real-world biodiversity that was suddenly thrown into the spotlight, all thanks to a really clever name.
Section 2. The ultimate citizen science app. Gamifying nature.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it scales up globally. Researchers from Oxford, Cambridge, and University College London actually published this fascinating study in the journal Conservation Letters, looking at the worldwide impact of the Pokémon phenomenon. Lee Jaya Dorward, a doctoral candidate over at Oxford, pointed out that the basic facts and information about Pokémon Go make it sound like an incredibly successful citizen science project. And I want you to just think about that for a second. We constantly hear that interest in natural history is dying out, right? That people are just spending less and less time outside. But Pokémon Go essentially acted like a giant global gateway drug to natural history. It physically gets people out of their houses, walking around, observing their environments, and tracking down species. When you really look at it, it's only one step removed from real-world biological fieldwork, like insect collecting or bird watching. And it makes total sense when you look at how the game actually works. The mechanics build this direct bridge to real-world biology. In the game, you find grass Pokémon in parks, and you find water Pokémon near rivers and lakes. So boom, right there, it's teaching the basic ecological concept of habitat preferences. It even has continent-restricted species, like how Tauros is only available in the Americas or Mr. Mime in Europe. Without even realizing it, millions of players were literally getting a crash course in biogeography. They were actively absorbing complex scientific principles, like species abundance and geographic distribution, just by staring at their smartphones.
And this virtual obsession actually bled into the physical world in a pretty awesome way, sparking what became known as the Pokeblitz movement. Players were actually making huge adjustments to their daily routines just to get outside and increase their odds of finding virtual creatures. But while they were out there searching, something amazing happened. They started discovering real, non-virtual wildlife. People started jumping on Twitter using the hashtag Pokeblitz to help each other identify the real bugs, birds, and animals they were photographing while out playing the game. Gamers were literally transforming into amateur naturalists right before our eyes.
Section 3. Virtual Vs, Real Wildlife, the Biophilia Hypothesis.
To really grasp why a game about wandering around catching digital monsters became so universally addictive, we kind of have to look at the biophilia hypothesis. Basically, this is the idea that humans possess a hardwired, inbuilt affinity for nature and a deep-seated desire to explore the natural world around us. The massive, undeniable popularity of Pokémon Go might actually just be a modern proxy for that innate desire. We inherently want to connect with nature, we want to explore new habitats, and to some degree, this game perfectly satisfies that biological itch, even if the nature we're exploring is just rendered in pixels on a screen.
But of course, we've got to weigh the pros and cons of all this gamification, because it is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the plus side, the game dramatically lowers the barriers to engaging with nature. Modern conservation is usually framed in these very dense, highly scientific terms that can just be super off-putting to the average person. But Pokémon uses relatable characters and an easy interface. If you have a smartphone, you're in. However, the costs can be incredibly severe. There are major risks when you prioritize a virtual game over actual ecological preservation. For instance, researchers pointed out a massive controversy in the Netherlands, where players were blamed for causing severe damage to a protected sand dune system south of The Hague. They were just so intensely focused on capturing a digital creature that they blindly trampled and devastated a very delicate, very real habitat.
Which leads right into this pretty stark warning from Dr. Chris Sambrook of the UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Center. He cautions that, quote, interest in finding a rare Vaporeon might replace concern for real species threatened with extinction. And that's the scary part, right? While gamification definitely gets people outside, there's a very real danger that actual, breathing, endangered nature might just be reduced to a mundane, ignored background wallpaper for our virtual hunts. We could easily become so hyper-focused on our glowing screens that we completely stop caring about the actual biodiversity that is crumbling right under our feet.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty massive, powerful question to chew on. Can the urge to catch 'em all actually be harnessed to save the planet? Or will augmented reality ultimately overshadow nature itself? We've seen firsthand how a video game can inspire real scientists to name rare beetles, and how it can intuitively teach millions of people the fundamentals of ecology. The desire to connect with our world is clearly there. We've proven that. The real challenge for conservationists now is to figure out how to take that immense global energy and redirect it towards saving the incredible real-world species that inspired these games in the very first place. Thank you so much for exploring this wild topic with me today. Stay curious, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.